And a lot of people, oh, here we go. A lot of people think that or fear that their child may not be ready for toilet training. And it's a biggie for me because I'm not sure what readiness is. I tend to just crack on. So ERIC is the major website organisation who have a website to do with bladder and bowel issues. And I checked on their website and they said for children with additional needs, they rarely show signs of readiness. I would go with that. It advocates that you can prepare by practicing all the precursors, yes, of course. And very importantly, the longer you leave a child in nappies, the harder it is to teach them to use the toilet and accept not wearing a nappy. Absolutely, definitely, and particularly with autistic children, because change is so difficult. Okay, so I'm not a fan of leaving it and leaving it, although there are circumstances where it's just not possible, and it's not the end of the world if we end up doing it a little bit later. But if opportunity arises, and if we can make opportunities arise, I would advocate that we don't leave it and leave it. One of the handouts you'll get tomorrow is a readiness guide that the National Autistic Society have written, and it looks at the child's various areas of difficulty, need, etc. And when I did the training with them, the main thing that they looked for was if a child could hold their urine for 1 to 2 hours. And they did this by popping a nappy liner inside the child's nappy and then just checking it every couple of hours to see if any urine had passed. I've never come across a child that couldn't hold their urine for 1 to 2 hours, and I would say that I have come across loads and loads and loads and loads and loads of children that can hold their urine for absolutely hours. So in terms of bladder and bowel services, often our autistic children are classed as being functionally continent because they can hold their urine. But obviously, in the real world, if they are holding their urine and only passing urine into a nappy, then their continence is not terribly useful or functional for us. So obviously, if you have got a child that literally can't hold their urine for 1 to 2 hours, then they're not at a level to be toilet trained. But I've not come across that scenario. But it's good to check. It's good to have a way that you can check if you're concerned about that. So planning is really important if you're going to toilet train a child, an autistic child. And I think it's important to say that this is a training program, and we at Reach Out and many other people working in the field of autism don't like sort of behavior and reward type programs as a general rule. It's not something that we would advocate, but I think in this particular thing, for a limited amount of time where you are teaching a child how to use the toilet and what it's for, then I think that's fair enough. I think that's different, and it wouldn't be something that we would be doing right across other areas. But it is called toilet training for a reason, because we are literally training the child to use the toilet, and these are often children where you can't explain it, where they don't have the ability to understand your words and follow them and put them into practice. So when you're planning to toilet train a child, if this has never been done before, it's a little bit different to if you've had sort of failed attempts. But let's just put the scenario where you've got, say, a 4-year-old child the parents at family, school, nursery have never tried to take them out of nappies before. So my first thing would be to meet with the family, meet with the setting, and decide, when are we going to do this? Because it's no good doing it if you're just about to go into the festive period and then you're going on a winter holiday. You need to figure out a time where not when somebody's just about to have another baby or whatever. Summertime, springtime is obviously better. That's common sense, because they can be in just shorts and things, and you can get the washing dry more easily. But it can be done also in winter. I don't want to restrict anybody, but I would, if it was now and I was looking at a child, I'd be planning to maybe do it do it straight after Easter, for example. So whilst if you've got a little bit of a run up of time, it's a really good idea to put those preparations in place and help the child to start to get used to doing things like entering the bathroom more often, maybe going near the toilet, maybe sitting on the toilet. If you've got a child that's absolutely not having it, I would just leave the preparations in that case. If they're absolutely not prepared and are really struggling with the idea of sitting on the toilet, for example, then I might not do any prep, because it could actually just be worse, because then by the time you get to the nappy off thing, you've already got a problem, whereas it might be better just to wait till that date in spring and say, right, that's it. So we'll come to that's it in a minute. So think about motivators. If you've got a child that's motivated by chocolate buttons, it's absolutely flipping brilliant. If you've got a child that's not motivated by very much at all, it's much more tricky. Whatever, it doesn't have to be food, it doesn't have to be chocolate. I've had a child that was motivated by chunks of cheese. Some children, as I say, they might not be motivated by food, but they might be motivated by a particular toy or some other reward, like playing at the sink. Some children, you really, there isn't anything and you can't make it be. So if you've got a child that is where you can agree on something, like, let's do the chocolate buttons scenario, you would need to make sure that they didn't get those chocolate buttons at any other time. Okay, so they can't just go to the cupboard and help themselves. The chocolate buttons need to be somewhere extremely close to the toilet, but not within reach. Maybe in a locked box if need be, or a Tupperware or something high up, so that you are literally training the child that when that wee comes in that toilet, you get a reward straight away, and it's got to be the most amazing thing ever. I mean, some children, obviously, we know that some autistic children don't like the big woohoo, but lots of children do. So you need to know your child, of course you do, but it needs to be just incredible to make them want to go back and do it again. You definitely think about making your bathroom space, whether that's at school, nursery, at home, more attractive. Bling it up. I've had a child who was into dinosaurs, and we stuck collages of really detailed collages of dinosaurs around that would hold his attention, to encourage him that he would like to spend time in the cubicle, deal with odors. Some children don't like any smell. Some children might like a particular smell, but toilety smells don't tend to be particularly pleasant for anybody. You might have a basket of things that they are happy to do. So if you've got a child that likes to flick through a book, it's ideal to have a few books in the bathroom. And whilst that might seem unhygienic, you can just keep them in the bathroom for bathroom use only, and maybe defume them afterwards, or I don't know, leave them there for the next child, and then eventually they'll probably get flushed down the loo or eaten or something. But don't be afraid. We sort of break the rules a bit on what's acceptable within a bathroom when we're doing this sort of thing. We need to make it doable so that we get what we want from it. So it can be a bit far out depending on who your child is. Think about keeping the child stable and safe so that they feel comfortable. So they might need a little insert to make them feel safe. They might need a footstool. If they're an older child that may be a little bit unstable, with maybe some bit dyspraxia or something, you might be able to get a frame around the toilet that helps them to feel nice and safe. This is something you might get through your OT or through other means, depending on who else you've got involved with your child. Think about at schools, whether you might use the disabled toilet in a nursery or a school, because it's more private and you can personalise it's less noisy. They're not fighting around with everybody else. Some schools have little low toilets that are nicer. Some children are happier with a bigger toilet because that's what they've got at home. So liaise with your family, think about who your individual child is, and do all you can to make this an amazing place. And the little boy with the dinosaur collage, we discovered immediately we'd made a big mistake because we'd stuck the collages on the wall. So then he just wanted to stand next to the toilet and look at them on the wall and wasn't on the toilet. So we then got another collage and put like a stiff back on it so he could sit and hold it on the toilet. And so that kept him on the loo. So that's it. We make mistakes as we go along. We live and learn. So deciding on a date and getting everything and everybody involved is a key. So tomorrow you'll get your handout that sort of breaks this down a little bit. I always say if the child's coming into school or nursery that they need to bring a bag full of spare clothes, including socks and sort of shoes if they wear plimsolls or something that will go through the washing machine easily, because a pound to a penny they'll stand and it'll just go down into the boots, literally. So we need to, wherever possible, work with our families so that we've got plenty of spare clothes and we're not running out. As I say, in the warmer weather, shorts are fantastic. Plenty of spares, and if it's winter time, lightweight joggers that you can wash and dry quite quickly will help families. One of the best pieces of equipment that I've found, if you can call it that, is washable seat pads. And you'll get links tomorrow on how to get these. You can get the paper ones that are a bit like the Huggies ones that you can buy, or adult continence pads. But the trouble with paper ones is that the children tend to rip them up and eat them. So the washable ones are pretty indestructible. They hold a full wee-wee, and it means that you are not reverting back to nappies when you're traveling somewhere in the car or out in the pushchair or whatever. Or even on the settee, if a child is likely to sit still in one place on the settee, that you don't have to worry, because if they've got that underneath them, they're relatively cheap, they're easy to wash and dry, and quite frankly, I think they're marvellous. Okay, so the execution of the plan. So I would advocate that the first 2 weeks, when you've made your date, are going to be intense. They're going to be all about this. They're not going to be about anything else. So any other pressures need to be off the boil. So don't be expecting, if your child's in school, that they're going to attend to all their lessons as usual, whatever they may be. You are going to have to let other things go, because this is the main focus. So that's why we need to be working really closely with our families to make sure that they're able to do that too. Some families might choose to keep their child at home or do it in the school holidays. I think that's quite hard, but everybody's individual, aren't they? I think it's good if we've got as many people on board as possible, because it is literally intense to start with. So I would suggest, if I was working with a child in a school or a nursery, that they arrived on the Monday morning in their nappy as usual, that the staff would take the nappy off when they arrived at school, and then that would be the end of nappies, except at night. So I always encourage people to link pajamas with nappies. So when they get ready for bed and put their pajamas on, they put their nappy on. When they get up in the morning and they're going to get dressed, that's when the nappy comes off. And it allows you a little bit of freedom. So if you're having a jolly bad day and everything's been weed on and you're absolutely flagging, you can put them into the pajamas perhaps a bit early with the nappy and go, that was that day done. And the same in the morning. If you're not quite ready yet, don't get them dressed yet. But to help the child understand, nappies are a nighttime thing. They go with nightwear. In the daytime, we don't go back to nappies or pull-ups. Certainly in those first 2 weeks, it's knickers or underpants. And that is a whole new experience if the children have never done it before. So it feels different. It can be quite stressful for the child. That's why we don't want to be putting other stresses on them. They don't necessarily know what it is we want them to do. They probably don't at that point. And it's tricky, it's hard. And that's why I think it's often easier if you've got staff that know the child very well, that can do this, to give families a break in the daytime. For those, then you've got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, hopefully, if they're in school age anyway, before the parents have to carry on over the weekend. So you're trying to catch a wee is what basically. We look at wees first because they tend to come more frequently, much more frequently, so you've got something to work with. Try to make sure that the child is drinking plenty if that's possible to do, because the more they drink, the more wees there are and the more chance you've got of catching one. Some children, you can just catch it quite quickly, give the reward, and build on it quite easily. And if all our kids were like that, we'd be cooking on gas, wouldn't we? But of course, we've got individuals with varying needs and varying responses to the disappearance of the precious nappy, and that is often all they've ever known, and it can be quite difficult for the child. We may not have the words or the language to help them understand, but what we're trying to do is to create a lovely, fun environment in the bathroom. Maybe you'd have the tap running and you might be going in and out and in and out quite often to start with. Oh, let's have another try. Let's have another try. Let's have another try. Let's see if we can catch one. And you may not get anywhere on the first day, but please don't be demoralized. I think by the weekend, if you haven't caught one at all yet, you start to feel quite demoralized. I usually find that children who maybe fall into two categories, broadly speaking. There's children that do quite a lot of wee-wees and they're just not really sure where they're supposed to go, and that's how you can catch those children. Not easily, but more easily. And then the other group of children that I see a lot of are children that just are so confused that their nappy has gone that they literally just hold their wee and hold it and hold it and hold it. And so I've got a couple of children, and I don't have any answers for, that hold the urine for 24 hours, which is really worrying for parents, and really worrying, really. It's not good, is it? It's a very challenging situation, and you wish you could find a way forward, and it's hard to do so. But I think in those first, going back to the first 2 weeks, not thinking long term yet, in that intense 2 weeks, they've got to have time to process the fact that this nappy has gone. What are they going to do about it? So there might be the first day where they might wet themselves a couple of times, then the next 48 hours they might hang on for long periods or wait till they get their night nappy on and fill it, a typical sort of pattern that you might see. And then gradually you might start to get a bit more success if they're able to watch dad weeing or brother or school or nursery friends. That can give the child some idea. There's other things, fun things you can do, like washing up liquid bottles, squirting water down the loo, you're having fun, you're encouraging them to be in the loo, and you're also demonstrating how wet stuff goes down the loo. If they are boys and they're very reluctant to sit on, don't be disheartened because they can stand up to wee. If they are girls, obviously we don't have that luxury. If they have never wanted to go near a toilet before, we talked about before, not doing that preparation because they're very averse. Once the nappy comes off, it's kind of like, well, they've got to work this out now because the nappies are gone and they've got to do it somewhere. So sometimes it really is just seeing what they're prepared to do. And children that have been averse to going near the toilet previously might suddenly realize that they don't need to be averse, that they can stand and wee. Poos come later, they're more complicated, but we're just looking at wees in the first instance. So there are things that we can bring into the mix. If you're in the second of the 2 week and you're getting nowhere, there's things like children's urinals, little toy type ones that you can buy cheaply in places like Argos, which might encourage a child who's perhaps not wanting to go near the toilet. Obviously, there's potties for smaller children, but they don't tend to make them for bigger children. I've known people use camping toilets where they've not got a downstairs toilet at home and they know that they're not going to be able to get them up and down. People can be quite ingenious, and children can be quite ingenious. I once had a child that would wee into anything round, so he weed into mugs and all sorts. Let's sort of see what works for the individual child, and just keep being really positive. Don't react if there's wee on the floor, if there's wee on the clothes. The child can help to remove the clothes and get changed, which might be something that they don't particularly enjoy or not. But we don't need to say anything. Don't react. Don't give them a load of verbal about, oh no, you've weed again. Just get them changed, help them get changed, and we're back on again, trying to get that fluid in and trying to build up a pattern. Tomorrow you'll get a toileting plan. Oh, I can't show you at the moment. But also, I haven't brought one, but I'll get one sorted for you. Just a time record so that you can keep notes of when you've taken the child to the toilet and whether or not they were wet, dry, dirty, or managed to go to the toilet, and start to build up a routine. So if you've got a child that can dribble a wee out every half an hour, then keep taking them to the toilet quite frequently, like every 20 minutes, because then you're going to catch one, hopefully. If you've got a child that's only going to wee once a day, you probably don't want to be taking them every 20 minutes, because you'll drive them round the bend and you'll just stress them out. But you could take them, say, 4 times a day at natural intervals, when the other children would go, when you might go yourself. It really is quite individual. But if you keep a record, then you start to build up an idea of when it's a good time to be taking them, how often you might want to take them. Poos, I keep putting off talking about poos because they're tricky. Often I have children that will only poo into a nappy, and sometimes we just need to just leave that. So you might be working on wee toilet training, but you might give them the nappy to poo in at night and then just take it straight off again. Step by step. I think that's okay, because you can't necessarily work on both things at once. In the first 2-week period, I would want to stick it out with as we've said, to have the nappies off in the day and only on at night. But once we get to the end of those 2 weeks, we really have to review where we're up to. Let's have a look at the next slide. Yes, communication. A lot of people think that they can't toilet train their autistic child because they can't talk yet. This is not so. Or they think that they can't toilet train their child because they have learning difficulties as well as autism and don't seem to be aware. This is not necessarily so. Some people are waiting for them to initiate that they need the toilet, but there's lots of things in between. So I've toilet trained a lot of children using that 2-week intense mechanism, and they have not had any means to communicate, but that's still okay. It's sometimes that they will take themselves to the toilet, and that might be as far as they ever get. But my goodness, what a difference it makes to be dry, to be continent, to be able to manage their own needs. Excuse me. It's not that it's not worth doing. It can be that you get a child to that point when they're 5, and then when they get to 10 or 11, they start to be able to communicate that they need to go. Then you don't know where you're going to end up. It might be that they only ever go to the toilet when you remind them, but they can stay dry all day. Well, there's nothing wrong with that, is there? Some of the children that with the more severe learning difficulties that have toilet trained have never become fully toilet trained. So often it's if they're very much older. If they've started at 10 or 11, it is a little late in the day, and they have progressed enough that they can just use a small pad. Excuse me. Sometimes they might go to the toilet when you remind them and just wear a small pad in between. And that's better than being completely incontinent. I'm just getting a drink. Sorry, folks. Thank you. Oh, that's better. Sorry about that. We have to remember our children are going to grow up, and the more independent that we can make them, the safer they will be as adults. The less help they need with personal care, the better. So if we start out and we think, well, they're never going to manage to be toilet trained, but they become semi-toilet trained, a hybrid, as I put, then that gives them a deal of independence and safety. So I'm all for that. Getting children out of nappies at night is another thing again. So if you've managed to toilet train them for wee wee and poo poo, then you might want to, families might want to look at nighttime continence. Some children, once the nappy's off, they won't have it on, not know how, and the nappy's gone. So therefore, the whole thing comes at once. And that can also happen with daytime alone. I'll tell you about an 8-year-old who I was working with. Excuse me. And he was very aggressive and got very distressed when his nappy was being changed. And it often took 2 people and was really a difficult situation. He really disliked it. So I thought, well, let's see if we can get him toilet trained. The young man had very limited communication skills. It seemed to make sense that if he was toilet trained, then he wouldn't need the interventions with the nappies and the behaviour would improve. Obviously, if you're trying to change someone's nappy, you have to be very close to them. So he was a very rigid young man. And we did the 2-week challenge, and his parents, I went to visit them. They were the ones that got the camping toilet downstairs, and we got everything ready. Off we went, took the nappy off on the Monday morning, and he was very uptight, no surprise. He was 8 years old and he'd never gone without a nappy before. He wasn't a happy chappy. By the weekend, he was really not a happy chappy. And when he came back on the Monday morning to school, his mum was really feeling quite uneasy about what we were doing and rather concerned that we were expecting something that just wasn't possible. And then during that second week, the penny dropped for our boy and he never varied again. And that's not uncommon, because if a child's thinking is very rigid, once they've got it, they've got it. They're not going to wet themselves. They're not going to have accidents. They're going to stick to that new rule. The new rule is in, the old rule is out, and that's that. And obviously it made his life considerably better, and for those around him also. Some children have difficulties with using different toilets. That's sort of the next thing. So there's sort of next steps, isn't there? The key thing is getting the wee-wees on the toilet. Following that, getting the poo-poos on the toilet, and then other things to follow, like can they start to communicate that they need to go? Can they manage their clothing? Are they going to wander out of the toilet half undressed? Lots of different things for us to work on. Will they use a different toilet? If they're doing toilet training in a nursery or a school, once they're more confident, try and get them to use or even just visit different toilets within the building. Try not to get too rigid yourself. Sometimes they'll only use the right-hand cubicle or something like that. I mean, if they're really resistant, then don't worry too much, but even just walking in and out of the cubicle, just to get some different, build in a bit of resilience for what happens when things are different. Just going to look quickly at troubleshooting, and then we'll open up for questions. So we've talked already about children holding the urine for many hours. It is indeed very challenging, can be quite stressful, distressing, and obviously medically concerning. Sometimes children will do a wee into their nappy. Excuse me, which will allow us to do a very, very gradual, slow move over, it could be weeks or months. So if you've got a child that will wee in their nappy but not out of it, you could start by putting the nappy on, and whilst they're in the bathroom, but they're just wandering around the bathroom, letting them fill the nappy, and then taking it off and go back out to the classroom or setting, whatever the setting is, or home. So that's step one. Step two would be they're putting on the nappy and you're standing them near the toilet and they're filling it, and then you're taking it off and then off they go. Step three would be you're putting the nappy on, you're sitting them on the toilet with the nappy on, they're filling it, you take the nappy off and off they go. Step four would be maybe the nappy might be a little bit loose, or you might decide to cut just a tiny hole in the bottom of the nappy, so when they fill the nappy it starts to drip down the loo. Or you might cut away at the sides, loosen it and start to, so you're gradually making the nappy smaller, so the child's sitting on the toilet with less and less nappy around them until the nappy's gone and they're weeing on the toilet. So that is a valid way of working, and you can do the same thing with poo as well. It goes for that as well. It's really quite useful for children that will only poo into a nappy. So you start by putting the nappy on in the bathroom, letting them fill the nappy, taking it off, so they're not then wandering around the house with the nappy on, and then gradually standing them next to the toilet with the nappy on for the poo, then sitting them on the toilet with the nappy for the poo, and then gradually cutting away at the nappy so that eventually the poo drops down into the toilet. One thing, as well as the wonderful washable mats, another thing that I found really useful is it's called a portable bidet. It's basically an insert, a plastic insert that you can sit inside the toilet bowl. So if you've got a child where you want to see if any wee has come, or they want to see if any wee has come, or poo, or if you're trying to stop them from putting their hands down into the toilet and playing with the water in the bowl, a portable bidet is your friend. So it's just a white plastic insert. They only cost a few pounds. There'll be a link on the information that you get tomorrow, and you just pop it in the toilet bowl and then put the seat on top and sit there. You can even put little tinkly twinkly things in it. If you've got something that sings when it gets wet, you can buy them. If you, to get that instant reward, oh yes, the wee has gone down into the toilet, it might reduce the fear for children that are frightened of the wee going all the way down to the bottom of the toilet. Interoception is a problem where our autistic children sometimes don't understand the feelings of their internal systems. And I think that where I've had children where I've just made no progress at all, and there have been a few, I think that's why, where they're just not getting the message at all. I worked with one girl who she could just about think about getting toilet trained, but it meant that she couldn't cope with anything else at all ever. So in the end, it wasn't the right thing for her, because it just was so difficult for her to pick up her signals that it was just it just obliterated her life, really. And for some autistic people, they do not gain full continence. Ros Blackburn is an autistic speaker who travels the country and maybe further afield, and she is not continent. However, in my experience, many autistic children and children with additional learning difficulties as well can become continent, and often they may seem as though they're not very aware of the world around them. They may not have they might have quite limited communication skills, and yet they can do this. So definitely always try. If you end up putting things on pause, it doesn't mean you've failed, because you can come back to it again. Of course you can. I haven't really gone into fear and anxiety. I haven't really got time. We know that's something that autistic children often struggle with. So I really just talked about trying to make it as fun as possible and get as much support in as possible when you're doing that early work. Soiling and smearing is quite difficult, and it sort of contraindicates what we're talking about. If you've got a child who's soiling and inclined to put their hands inside their underwear and you've just taken them out of nappies, it can be quite challenging, because normally with a child that smears, you would want to sort of put a suit on backwards so that they can't get into their underwear, but that's not compatible with toilet training. So that's a tricky one. And there are scenarios where I have thought, no, this is not the right child at the right time. I wouldn't advocate that everybody goes steaming in without a second thought and bangs the drum and waves the flag that this child can definitely become toilet trained. I have had children for whom it's the wrong time, where it is not a priority for reasons such as family reasons, or they've just got so much else going on that it really isn't the priority right now. If their placement is in jeopardy, or they've got a lot of transitions going on, it's just not the right time. And I've had the odd child with very severe learning difficulties who just wasn't possible for them to have that awareness. But I'd say with the majority of children, it's definitely worth a crack.